This program is provided by Universal Genesis.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really drilling into something fascinating from 20th century philosophy. It looks like a huge clash, right? We've got this vibrant philosophy of life on one side, and then this much darker philosophy of death on the other.
That's the immediate impression, yeah. You picture Nietzsche and Bergson, all about affirming life, constant becoming, and then Heidegger, seemingly obsessed with death and limits.
Right, polar opposites.
But, when you look at the sources we've been digging into, it turns out they were both wrestling with the exact same fundamental problem.
Which was?
How do we actually live? How do we find meaning after the old foundations, after metaphysics, after, well, God, basically, have crumbled?
Okay, so our mission today is to unpack how these views, which seem so contrary, aren't really enemies. They're more like two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. Two necessary poles of the same existential ground. It's about seeing how life looks different, maybe even clearer, when you understand its end.
Okay, let's unpack this. So let's start with that first pole, the philosophy of life. We're talking Nietzsche, Arne Bergson. What's the core idea there?
Well, the key terms are Leben, life, or Werden, becoming. It's all about affirmation, a kind of radical yes to existence, to creation, to continuous flow.
And this is where Bergson's idea of durée fits in. Duration.
Precisely. But it's crucial to get this right. He didn't mean clock time, tick-tock. He meant time as this inner seamless flow, like listening to a melody. You can't really chop it up into separate notes, can you?
No, it hangs together.
Right. And that's life for Bergson. It's this constant movement, this élan vital, this vital impulse. It's always surging forward, creating, overflowing.
So value is the flow itself. It's about expansion, almost limitless potential.
That's the feel of it, yeah. Now, contrast that with Heidegger.
Okay, bring on the gloom.
Well, maybe not gloom, exactly. His focus is on sign, being, and Tod, death. And his starting point is that our ordinary, everyday lives were mostly asleep at the wheel.
Asleep? How so?
In a state of self-forgetfulness, we're caught up in, daily routines, trivial tasks, idle chatter. We lose sight of our own existence.
So, using your melody analogy before, we're too busy tidying the music stand to actually hear the music.
That's actually a pretty good way to put it, yes. And for Heidegger, the thing that jolts us awake, that shatters that forgetfulness, is anticipating our own death.
Being towards death. Sein zum Tode.
That's the term. Only by confronting the fact that our existence is finite, that it will end, can we grasp what it means to be authentic.
It still sounds incredibly morbid, though. How does staring into the abyss help you live?
It's not about morbidity, it's about clarity. Think of it this way. Death isn't just the stop sign at the end of the road. For Heidegger, it's the extreme boundary marker. It's the limit that throws everything before it into sharp relief.
Okay.
One source put it really powerfully. Death is like the bright light that illuminates life most clearly, precisely because it shows you the edges. It forces you to see this existence, your existence, as precious and unique because it's not infinite.
Okay, I see the connection now. It sets up that complementary structure you mentioned. Both Bergson and Heidegger are rejecting external, mechanical time.
Right. They both see time as internal, intrinsic to existence itself.
But they're coming at it from completely opposite ends.
Exactly. Bergson starts from the beginning, you can say, from generation, from the continuous creative flow. Heidegger starts from the end. Finitude. The limit.
Two halves of the same circle. You need the boundary to understand the flow.
You got it. You can't fully grasp the meaning of the river without understanding its banks.
Philosophically, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But the history wasn't quite so neat and tidy, was it? I mean, the sources suggest this wasn't a parallel development.
No, not at all. That's a really critical point. The sequence matters. The philosophy of life came first. It was this big wave of affirmation trying to fill the void left by, God's death.
And Heidegger reacted to that.
Fiercely. He acknowledged Bergson as an important precursor, but he was deeply critical of what he saw as the excesses of that life affirmation.
What was his main beef with Bergson's durée? Was it just too optimistic, too floaty?
It was deeper than optimism. Heidegger's critique was quite technical. He essentially accused Bergson of dodging the fundamental question of being itself sane.
How so?
By focusing entirely on the psychological feeling of flow, this continuous internal duration, Heidegger argued Bergson reduced existence to just a psychological phenomenon. It was all inner experience, but it lacked a grounding. It didn't ask the structural question of what it means to exist in the first place.
So it's like Bergson described the feeling of floating, But Heidegger wanted to know what gravity was.
Sort of, yeah. Or like describing the wind without asking about the air itself. Heidegger felt Bergson's durée, while capturing something real about experience, didn't get to the ontological core.
So when Nietzsche and Bergson championed life, unboundedly, the sources say they risked making life itself a new god. Heidegger saw that as just another idol.
Precisely. A new idol for modern metaphysics. Life itself became the new absolute, replacing the old one. Heidegger's introduction of death wasn't meant to be purely negative, not just to negate life.
What was its function then?
Its function was to stop that potentially endless, formless flow, to impose limitation, finitude, a boundary. This was what the sources called his deepest excavation of the life philosophy.
I like that analogy we found. He wasn't trying to dry up the river, he was giving the river banks.
That nails it. And the banks are crucial, aren't they? They create definition, direction, even friction, which generates energy. Without limits, a river just spreads out, becomes a swamp.
Right.
But with banks, it carves a channel. It has force. By introducing the limit, death, Heidegger believed he could recover the specific depth, the contour, the unique story of an authentic existence.
So without finitude, life is just motion, but with finitude, it becomes a narrative, a specific journey.
Exactly, and it has weight.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the personalities of these philosophers seem to embody their ideas so perfectly.
Right.
It's almost archetypal.
Oh, absolutely. The contrast is stark. You have Henri Bergson on one hand. He's the man of light, of eloquence, the ultimate Parisian public intellectual.
Yeah, I read his lectures at the Collège de France were like the hottest ticket in town for the elite. Practically society events.
They were. And his style, it was famously musical, poetic. He blended philosophy and prose so well, he actually won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1927.
Incredible. And his background, you mentioned, influenced by physiology and psychology, it all suggests this fluid, vital energy.
Completely.
Yeah.
Now picture the opposite, Martin Heidegger.
The hermit of the Black Forest.
Right, the figure of the old farmer. He was known for his which translates roughly as taciturnity, a kind of deliberate, slow speech.
Like he was weighing every word.
Exactly, as if pulling heavy stones out of the earth. He wasn't the dazzling lecturer in Paris. He was the solitary thinker in his mountain hut at Tottenberg.
And his philosophy felt rooted, literally, in the ground. He talked about the potato-growing ground, not some abstract universal.
Yes, that agrarian sensibility is key. It connects his whole philosophy of existence to this concept of Bodenständigkeit, rootedness, being grounded in the soil.
So, if Bergson's life force was like light, spreading everywhere,
then Heidegger's finitude, his emphasis on being towards death, acts like philosophical gravity. It forces that life to take root, to connect to the arid, the earth.
and this is where it gets uncomfortable. Because that very idea of Bodenständigkeit, of rootedness in the specific German soil, that poetic, localized sense of existence,
Tragically became entangled with the toxic blood and soil ideology of the Volk, the nation, and ultimately with Nazism in the 1930s.
it's a chilling example of how an idea about individual authenticity needing roots, needing limits, can be twisted and scaled up into dangerous political territory.
It really highlights the stakes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The path taken after rejecting the old certainties mattered immensely in the 20th century.
Absolutely. And that post-Nietzschean quest for meaning seemed to have split things wide open, leading down two very different paths.
That's right. You see this major bifurcation. On one side, the legacy of the life philosophy, the élan vital, the continuous flow, it largely turned inward.
How so?
It fed into explorations of the psyche, the psychological deep end, you could say, even into mysticism. Think about Freud's concept of the libido, this primal life drive, or Jung's ideas about the collective unconscious. The focus shifted to the inner universe, the spiritual realm within.
Okay, so life went inwards. What about death? The emphasis on limits and finitude.
That current flowed outwards. The stress on decision, on action within limits, it poured directly into political engagement, and often into political extremism.
We already mentioned Heidegger and Nazism.
Right. But you also see it with the other major death philosopher, Jean-Paul Sartre. His path led him towards Marxism, even Maoism later on.
Sartre is interesting because his engagement wasn't like Bergson's natural eloquence, was it? It felt more driven.
Definitely. It stemmed from this intense intellectual duty, this profound sense of responsibility that comes with freedom, especially once you accept there's no God, no pre-written script, you are your choices.
And he made that significant shift, didn't he? From existentialism focusing on individual internal freedom
to demanding that freedom be realized concretely in the social structure. Through Marxism, He felt individual freedom was incomplete, maybe even illusory, while systemic oppression and suffering existed globally. He wanted to bridge that gap.
So the takeaway here is pretty stark. That core existential idea, accept human finitude, which sounds personal, philosophical.
In the pressure cooker of the 20th century, it could terrifyingly morph into this political passion to reshape human destiny. Because if time is short, if existence is finite, then the urgent task is to act, to change the world now. And, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the whole sweep of modern philosophy, really, since Nietzsche declared God dead, it looks like a grand succession of God substitutes.
Meaning we keep trying to find something absolute to fill that gap.
It seems to be an inherent human impulse, doesn't it? We need a center, a foundation for meaning. So the chain goes something like, first, we put our faith in reason, the Enlightenment project.
Then that faltered, and we turned to life itself, that vital force.
Right. Then Heidegger and others counter that with the sobering reality of death, of finitude, as the grounding point.
And after that, in the later 20th century.
Well, then you get the focus shifting towards structure, language, the systems that shape us. That's postmodernism territory.
Okay, so reason, then life, then death, then structure language. Quite the relay race for the absolute.
It is. And thinkers like Foucault and Derrida, the postmodernists, they were incredibly effective at deconstructing those structures. The sources use a great metaphor. They destroyed the tower of those last absolutes.
Leaving us where?
On the level ground, apparently, of the 21st century. The old certainties, the big isms, have been largely dismantled, philosophically at least.
But is the impulse gone? The need for something absolute?
That's the crucial point. The sources argue it's stubborn, like a weed. You cut down God, you cut down reason, you cut down structure. But that underlying human need for certainty, for an anchor, it just finds new soil.
And where is it sprouting now, do you think?
We're seeing contenders, aren't we? Maybe it's technology, the belief in AI and data as the ultimate reality. Maybe it's hypercapitalism, the market as the final arbiter. Or maybe new, very rigid forms of identity politics, tribalism.
So the cleanup from the last round isn't even finished, but new absolutes are already trying to take root.
Exactly. Things like new realism in philosophy or object-oriented ontology or new waves of environmental ethics. They're trying to find purchase on this cleared ground, even while the weeds of the absolute impulse keep pushing up.
Feels like we're in a constant state of philosophical landscaping.
Or maybe gardening is the better word. Constantly tending, constantly watching what grows.
So what does this all mean? Where does this deep dive leave us?
Well, we've seen that life and death, Bergson's flow, and Heidegger's limit weren't really opposites. They were inseparable partners in that huge 20th century project of figuring out existence after the old maps failed.
And the bigger lesson seems to be about us, about humanity. This drive to find or create an absolute, some ultimate center of meaning. It just seems baked in. It keeps coming back.
It really does seem to be a fundamental human impulse. And if that's true, if we can't just eradicate this weed, this need for the absolute, then maybe the role of philosophy needs a rethink.
It can't be about finding the next big answer, the next foolproof system.
Probably not, because history suggests that attempt just leads to new idols, new dangers.
What's the alternative if we're stuck with this impulse?
Maybe philosophy becomes less about grand system building and more about maintenance, an ongoing act of constant pruning.
Constant pruning,
Yeah.
like a gardener.
Exactly. So here's the thought to take away. If we know this weed, this absolute impulse, is always there, maybe the only way to keep things healthy, to prevent something potentially good like reason or technology or even national identity from growing out of control and becoming a new destructive god, is through constant, vigilant, small-scale criticism.
Keeping things in check, basically.
Day by day. The patient, necessary work of the philosophical gardener, tending the plot, making sure nothing gets too overgrown.
This program is provided by Universal Genesis.